You don't belong here." The words echoed across the Astra Dominion Academy courtyard before Emily Carter had even taken her first step inside. Hundreds of alien students turned to look at the human girl standing beneath the towering silver arches, and for a moment, the entire academy seemed to agree with the voice that had spoken. Emily tightened her grip on the small, Earth-issued bag over her shoulder and looked up at the massive structure surrounding her. She had traveled more than 14,000 miles across space to get there, leaving behind everything familiar on Earth for a chance that almost nobody thought she would get. The Astra Dominion Academy was not a normal school. It was the most respected military and leadership academy in known space, a place where the greatest civilizations sent their brightest young minds. The students walking through those halls came from worlds where strength, strategy, and survival had shaped their cultures for thousands of years. And then there was Emily, a human from Earth, a species many of them still considered young, fragile, and untested. The student who had spoken stepped forward. Kale Varen was a Dravari, one of the Academy's top-ranked students. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with silver-blue skin, sharp features, and the confidence of someone who had spent his entire life being told he was destined for greatness. "I am just curious," Kale said, looking at Emily's uniform. "Did Earth send a representative, or did they accidentally send someone from a civilian program?" A few students nearby laughed quietly. Emily felt the familiar pressure in her chest, the same feeling she had experienced during every interview, every test, every moment when someone decided they already knew who she was before hearing her speak. She could have answered immediately. She could have defended herself. Instead, she took a slow breath. On Earth, her father had taught her something simple. When people expect you to lose control, staying calm is the first way you prove them wrong. Emily looked at Kale and gave a small nod. "I'm Emily Carter. I'm here to learn." That answer seemed to confuse him more than an argument would have. "Learn," Kale repeated. "You came here to learn from warriors?" Emily adjusted the sleeve of her academy uniform. Everyone learns from someone. The conversation ended when Commander Marcus Hale entered the courtyard. Unlike the students, he did not stare at Emily like she was a curiosity. He simply looked at her file on his tablet and then looked back at her. Marcus had trained thousands of students from dozens of species. He knew the difference between someone who was confident and someone who needed everyone else to know they were strong. "Welcome to Astra Dominion Academy," he said. "Your first lesson begins now." The students began moving toward the training halls, but Emily noticed the whispers following behind her. She noticed the doubtful looks. She noticed the quiet laughter whenever someone mentioned Earth. She felt it. Of course she did. Being underestimated was not new. But walking through those enormous doors, surrounded by species that had never considered humans equals, Emily reminded herself why she came. She was not there to prove that humans were the strongest. She was not there to make anyone afraid. She was there because humanity had spent centuries surviving the impossible, adapting to challenges nobody else understood. And if this academy wanted to know what a human could do, Emily Carter was willing to show them. Just not in the way they expected. The first thing Emily Carter noticed about Astra Dominion Academy was not the size of the buildings. It was the silence that followed her. Every hallway, every training room, every conversation seemed to change the moment she walked past. It was not open hostility. It was something quieter. Curiosity mixed with doubt. The kind of attention people gave when they were waiting to see if someone belonged. By the second day, Emily had already learned the academy had its own rhythm. The Dravari students trained before sunrise. The Valen students spent hours studying strategy simulations. The Aurelian students focused on diplomacy and negotiation. Every species had a reputation. Every species had something they believed made them superior. Humans, however, were still a mystery to most of them. During the morning tactical briefing, Commander Marcus Hale stood at the front of the classroom while dozens of students gathered around the holographic display. "Today we begin with the foundation of every successful mission," Marcus said. "Understanding your environment." The display changed, showing different planets, different civilizations, and different conflict scenarios. Strength without awareness creates failure. Intelligence without discipline creates mistakes. The best leaders understand both. Emily listened carefully, taking notes on her tablet. She noticed that several students were not paying attention to the lesson. They were watching her instead. Kale Varen sat near the back of the room, leaning comfortably in his chair. He looked amused. Commander, Kale said, raising a hand. I have a question. Marcus looked toward him. Go ahead. Kale glanced at Emily. How does a species that spent most of its history fighting on one planet suddenly qualify to train beside civilizations that have commanded fleets for centuries? The room became quiet. It was not an aggressive question. That was what made it more difficult. It sounded reasonable. Emily understood that. She had heard versions of it before. Humans were new. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were emotional. She placed her tablet down. Maybe because experience is not measured only by how long you have existed, Emily said calmly. A few students turned toward her. Kale raised an eyebrow. Then how is it measured? Emily thought about that for a moment. By how many times you face something you were not prepared for and still find a way forward. Nobody laughed this time. Even Kale seemed surprised by the answer. Marcus watched Emily closely but said nothing. He had seen thousands of students enter his academy. Some arrived with confidence. Some arrived with fear. Some arrived believing they already knew everything. Emily was different. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was trying to understand. Later that afternoon, the students entered the training facility for their first evaluation. The assignment was simple. Complete a simulated rescue scenario as a team. Emily was placed with several alien students, including Kale. The others immediately looked to him for direction. That was normal. He was experienced. He was talented. He was also convinced that he was the only person in the room capable of leading. Emily stayed quiet at first, watching the simulation map carefully. She noticed small details others ignored. The changing conditions, the limited resources, the possible risks. Finally, she spoke. We should not take the direct route. Kale looked over. Why? Because the system is designed to make us choose the obvious path. A few students exchanged looks. Kale smiled slightly. And you believe you know better? Emily looked back at the simulation. No. I believe we should check before we assume. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus activated the countdown. The test began. And for the first time since arriving at Astra Dominion Academy, Emily Carter saw something change in the way the others looked at her. They were still uncertain. They were still watching. But now they were listening. The simulation timer began counting down, and the entire team moved at once. The rescue scenario looked simple on the surface. A damaged exploration team was stranded inside a collapsing research facility, and the students had 20 minutes to locate them, secure the area, and guide everyone to safety. But Commander Marcus Hale had designed the exercise to test something far more important than speed. He wanted to see how they made decisions when the obvious answer was wrong. Kale Varen immediately took control. We move through the central corridor, he said, pointing at the holographic map. It is the shortest route. The other students nodded. It made sense. The path was direct. The distance was minimal. It was exactly what a confident leader would choose. Emily studied the map again. Something bothered her. She looked at the energy readings, the emergency signals, and the pattern of the simulated damage. The central corridor is probably the first route the system expects us to take, she said. Kale glanced back at her. Probably. Emily looked up. Yes. We do not know yet. Kale smiled. You hesitate too much. It was not said with anger. It was said like a fact. Like he had already decided what kind of person she was. Emily understood that kind of judgment. Back on Earth, people often mistook caution for weakness. They thought the person who spoke the loudest had the best answer. But experience had taught her something different. The person who slows down long enough to notice the details is usually the person who prevents the mistake. Then check the other options, Emily said. We lose 30 seconds, but we gain information. Kale looked at the others. Are we really letting the newest student delay us? Nobody answered. That silence told Emily everything. They were not against her. They were simply afraid of making the wrong choice. Finally, one of the Valen students looked at the map. She has a point. The damage pattern does seem unusual. Kale crossed his arms. Fine. We check. But when this wastes our time, remember who warned you. They changed direction. 30 seconds later, the central corridor collapsed in the simulation. The holographic display flashed red. The team stopped. Nobody spoke for a moment. Kale stared at the failed route marker. Emily did not celebrate. She did not look at him like she had proven something. She simply continued studying the map. There is another problem, she said. The rescue team signal is moving. Kale looked surprised. Moving? Emily nodded. The system wants us to believe the victims are trapped in one location. But the emergency beacon is following a pattern. She pointed at the display. They are searching for us. The group became quiet again. This time, they were not questioning her. They were listening. Across the training room, Commander Marcus Hale watched through the observation window. Another instructor standing beside him looked over. The human is unusual. Marcus kept his eyes on Emily. No, the instructor asked. Marcus shook his head. She is exactly what humans are known for. The other instructor frowned. We thought humans were unpredictable. Marcus gave a small smile. They are. That is why they survive. Inside the simulation, Emily led the team through a different route. She did not command with authority. She guided with logic. She asked questions. She listened. And slowly, the students who had ignored her began following her decisions. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Emily was no longer just the human student everyone was watching. She was becoming the person everyone was depending on. The room was different after the simulation ended. Not because Emily Carter had won. Not because the team had completed the rescue exercise faster than expected. It was different because, for the first time, nobody was looking at her like she was an outsider. The students leaving the training chamber were quieter than before. They were thinking. They had entered the simulation expecting the human student to slow them down. Instead, she had been the reason they succeeded. Emily packed her equipment carefully, placing each item back where it belonged. She noticed Cale Varen standing near the exit, watching her. For a moment, she expected another sarcastic comment. Another reminder that she did not belong. But this time, Cale looked uncertain. You knew the system was trying to trick us, he said. Emily looked up. I suspected it. Cale frowned slightly. You always speak like that. Like what? Like you are not completely sure. Emily smiled a little. Because I am not. That answer seemed to confuse him. In Cale's world, confidence meant never showing doubt. A leader was supposed to have the answer before anyone else. But Emily had learned something different growing up on Earth. Real confidence was being honest about what you did not know and having the discipline to find out. You were wrong, Cale said. Emily nodded. Yes. He seemed surprised by how easily she admitted it. You do not care? Emily looked around the training room where students were still discussing the exercise. Being wrong is not the problem. Refusing to learn from it is. Cale did not respond. For the first time, he seemed to be listening instead of judging. But not everyone in the academy was ready to change their opinion. Later that evening, Emily walked through the main observation hall and saw several students reviewing recordings of the simulation. Some were studying her decisions. Others were trying to understand how a human could notice things they missed. A few still believed it was luck. That was fine. Emily knew she could not force people to respect her. Respect was earned over time. The next morning, Commander Marcus Hale called the students into the advanced strategy chamber. The room was larger than any classroom Emily had seen on Earth. A massive circular table filled the center, surrounded by holographic displays showing hundreds of possible mission scenarios. Today's lesson is about judgment, Marcus said. Every civilization believes its own methods are the best. Every warrior believes their experience is enough. He paused and looked around the room. That belief is how mistakes happen. His eyes briefly moved toward Cale, then Emily. The purpose of this academy is not to create students who never fail. It is to create leaders who recognize failure before it becomes disaster. The exercise began. This time, Emily was not placed at the edge of the group. Students asked for her opinion immediately. They wanted to know what she noticed. They wanted to understand how she thought. But then the simulation changed. A new challenge appeared. Unlike the previous test, this one was designed around individual decisions. Every student would have to prove themselves alone. The room became silent. Cale stepped forward first. He was confident again. This was the kind of test he understood. Strength, speed, pressure. Emily watched him enter the simulation area. She knew he was talented. She also knew talent could become a weakness when someone believed it was enough. A few minutes later, Cale returned with a frustrated expression. The simulation had not gone the way he expected. Marcus looked toward Emily. Your turn. Emily stepped forward. She took a breath and entered the chamber. She did not know what challenge waited for her. She did not know what the academy wanted to prove. But she knew one thing. She had not traveled across the galaxy to show everyone she was better than them. She had come to show them what humanity had always been. Adaptable, patient, and impossible to ignore. The simulation chamber felt different when Emily Carter stepped inside. Unlike the previous exercises, there was no team beside her. No classmates to observe. No one to question her decisions. For the next evaluation, she was alone. The chamber doors closed behind her, and the noise of the academy disappeared. Emily stood in the center of the empty room, looking at the environment forming around her. A ruined settlement appeared across the holographic landscape. Emergency signals flashed from different locations. Multiple objectives appeared at the same time. Rescue civilians. Secure resources. Establish communication. Complete the mission within the assigned time limit. It was designed to overwhelm. Emily knew that immediately. She had seen similar situations before, not in space, but on Earth. Different environments. Different challenges. Same principle. Too much information could make people stop thinking. She took a breath and looked carefully. The first instinct was to move quickly. That was what most students would do. But Emily waited. She watched the patterns. She studied the changing signals. The academy wants me to react, she whispered to herself. So, I need to understand why. She began moving, not toward the closest objective, but toward the one everyone else would ignore. Minutes passed. The simulation changed. The rescue signals became weaker. The communication systems became unstable. Emily adjusted her plan each time. She did not follow the path she first created. She adapted. In the observation room, several instructors watched silently. Cale Varen stood among them, his arms crossed. She is moving too slowly, one student said. The timer is already halfway finished. Cale did not answer immediately. He was watching Emily more carefully than before. No, he finally said. She is not slow. The student looked at him. Then what is she doing? Cale looked at the simulation. She is making sure she does not have to start over. It was the first time he had defended her. Even he seemed surprised by his own words. Inside the chamber, Emily reached the final stage of the test. She discovered that the simulated mission was not actually about completing every objective. It was about choosing which objectives mattered most. The academy had created a situation where success required accepting that not everything could be controlled. Emily made her decision. She prioritized the civilian rescue scenario and redirected the remaining resources to stabilize communication. The timer reached 0. The chamber lights turned back on. The simulation ended. Emily stepped out expecting another evaluation, another score, another judgment. Instead, Commander Marcus Hale was waiting. Why did you choose that approach? He asked. Emily looked at the results displayed on the screen. Because the mission was not about proving I could do everything. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Then what was it about? Knowing what mattered most when I could not do everything. For a moment, Marcus said nothing. Then he nodded. That answer is why you passed. The other students watched from behind him. Some looked impressed. Some looked confused. Cale looked thoughtful. Marcus turned toward the group. Many warriors believe strength means having more power than everyone else. They believe the strongest person is the one who can force the outcome they want. He looked back at Emily. But leadership is not about forcing the universe to follow you. It is about understanding it well enough to make the right choice. Emily left the training chamber quietly. She did not feel like she had proven herself. Not completely. There were still people in the academy who doubted her. There were still students who believed humans were not meant to stand beside them. But something had changed. The doubt was no longer invisible. It had become a question, and questions were the beginning of understanding. The academy was beginning to change, but Emily Carter knew better than to believe one successful test could erase years of doubt. Respect was not something people gave because of one good decision. It was something built slowly, through moments when nobody expected you to succeed. That was something every person from Earth understood. On the 6th day at Astra Dominion Academy, Emily entered the strategy hall and immediately noticed the difference. The whispers were still there, but they were different. Before, they sounded like people questioning why she was there. Now, they sounded like people trying to understand her. A group of students gathered around a tactical display, discussing the previous evaluations. The human approach is inefficient, one student said. It relies too much on observation and adjustment. Emily heard the comment, but kept walking. She had learned a long time ago that not every opinion required an answer. Cale Varen noticed her passing by. You are not going to defend yourself? He asked. Emily stopped and looked at him. Do I need to? Cale looked slightly confused. Most people would. Emily gave a small shrug. Most people are trying to win an argument. I am trying to learn. That answer stayed with him longer than she realized. Later that morning, Commander Marcus Hale introduced the next phase of training. This time, the students would work together in mixed teams. The objective was not to defeat an opponent or complete a mission alone. It was to build trust between species that thought differently. Marcus looked around the room before speaking. Every civilization has habits. Every species has assumptions. The danger begins when you mistake your habits for the truth. The students were assigned their teams. Emily found herself working alongside Kale and several other students from different worlds. At first, the atmosphere was uncomfortable. Nobody knew how to communicate with each other. They had different ways of thinking, different ways of solving problems. Kale naturally tried to lead. We should divide tasks based on ability, he said. The strongest members handle the difficult parts. Emily looked at the mission details. That might work if strength is the only factor. Kale looked at her. You disagree? I think we should consider what each person notices that others might miss. For a moment, Kale said nothing. Then he asked, what do you notice? Emily pointed toward the mission map. The environment changes every 10 minutes. The team that adapts fastest will have the advantage. One of the other students checked the data. She is right. Kale studied the information carefully. It was becoming harder for him to dismiss her ideas as coincidence. The exercise began, and the team moved through the simulated environment. They faced unexpected changes, limited resources, and confusing information. This time, Emily did not simply observe from the side. She contributed openly. She explained her reasoning. She listened when others had different ideas. Slowly, the group stopped seeing her as the human student. They started seeing her as a teammate. In the observation room, another instructor watched the progress. She does not lead the way our warriors do, he said. Marcus Hale nodded. No, then why are the others following her? Marcus looked through the glass at Emily and her team. Because she does not need them to follow her. The instructor looked puzzled. Then what does she need? Marcus smiled slightly. She needs them to think. Inside the simulation, Emily noticed Kale make a mistake. He had focused too much on reaching the objective quickly and missed an important detail. Before, she might have corrected him immediately. Instead, she asked a question. What happens if the situation changes? Kale looked at the map again. This time, he found the answer himself. He adjusted the plan. The team continued forward. It was a small moment. Nobody celebrated. Nobody announced a victory. But for Kale Varen, it was the first time he realized something important. Emily Carter was not trying to prove humans were better than everyone else. She was showing them that strength did not always look the way they expected. By the second week at Astra Dominion Academy, Emily Carter had learned something important. The hardest part of being the first human in a place like this was not the training. It was the expectation. Every mistake felt like proof to someone that humans did not belong. Every success felt like something they needed to explain away. Emily understood that pressure because she had grown up with it. On Earth, people often judged what they did not understand. The difference was that at the Academy, those judgments came from species that had never met a human before. They had stories about Earth. They had theories about humanity. But they had very little experience with the people themselves. That changed during the advanced field assessment. Commander Marcus Hale brought the students to the Academy's largest simulation complex, a facility designed to recreate real environments from across the galaxy. Today's exercise is not about individual performance, Marcus announced. It is about trust. The students looked at the massive display as a remote colony appeared on the screen. Their mission was to manage a complex emergency situation involving communication failures, limited supplies, and conflicting priorities. Your objective is simple, Marcus said. Protect the community, maintain order, and make decisions as a team. The teams entered the simulation. Emily worked alongside Kale Varen and 3 other students. At first, everything went smoothly. They followed the standard procedures. They organized resources. They assigned responsibilities. But then the simulation changed. The system introduced unexpected problems. The information they received was incomplete. Different groups needed help at the same time. The team stopped. We need to choose the highest priority location, Kale said. The Central District has the most people. Emily looked at the data. Maybe. Kale turned toward her. Maybe. Emily pointed at the screen. The numbers are correct, but the situation is changing faster than the report updates. One student looked confused. Then how do we decide? Emily paused. She did not have a perfect answer. She did not pretend to. We ask what information we are missing. The team became quiet. That was not the answer they expected. Most students had been trained to search for solutions. Emily was searching for the reason the problem existed. They began gathering more information. They reviewed patterns. They checked the environment. Slowly, the situation became clearer. The emergency was not random. It was designed to create panic and force quick decisions. Cale watched Emily work. He noticed something he had missed before. She was not faster than everyone else. She was not stronger than everyone else. She simply refused to make decisions based on assumptions. You always do this, Cale said quietly. Emily looked over. Do what? You question everything. Emily smiled slightly. Is that a bad thing? Cale looked back at the simulation. I used to think it was. The team continued. They adjusted their strategy and completed the exercise successfully. When they returned to the observation area, several instructors reviewed the results. One instructor looked surprised. The human student changed the entire team dynamic. Marcus Hale nodded. That is because she understands something many experienced warriors forget. What is that? The instructor asked. Marcus looked through the glass at Emily speaking with her teammates. A leader does not create followers. A leader creates better people around them. Emily did not hear those words. She was too focused on the next challenge waiting for her. But something had changed at Astra Dominion Academy. The students were no longer asking whether a human belonged there. They were starting to ask what they could learn from one. The days that followed changed the atmosphere at Astra Dominion Academy in ways Emily Carter never expected. She did not become the most popular student. She did not suddenly become someone everyone admired. Real change was slower than that. It happened in small moments. A student asking for her opinion before making a decision. Someone saving a seat for her during strategy class. A teammate saying, "Let us hear what Emily thinks," instead of ignoring her completely. Emily noticed those things, but she never let them distract her. She knew attention could disappear as quickly as it arrived. The only thing that mattered was continuing to prove herself through actions. Commander Marcus Hale understood that better than anyone. He had watched countless students arrive at the academy believing strength came from reputation, family name, or natural ability. Many of them were talented. Very few were willing to change. That was why he paid close attention to Cale Varon. The Dravari student had spent his entire life being the best in every room he entered. Now he was in a place where someone challenged the way he thought. Not through arrogance, not through competition, through patience. During an advanced leadership session, Marcus gave the class a simple assignment. You will each choose one teammate whose perspective differs from your own, he said. Then you will solve a problem together. Cale looked around the room and immediately knew who he would choose. Emily. Several students noticed. Emily looked surprised. Are you sure? Cale nodded. I want to understand your approach. It was not an apology. Not yet. But it was progress. They worked together in the academy's strategy room, reviewing a complex scenario involving a damaged settlement and limited resources. At first, their methods were completely different. Cale wanted a clear structure, a direct plan, a predictable outcome. Emily focused on possibilities. She looked at what could change, what could go wrong, and what information they still needed. You always prepare for things nobody expects, Cale said. Emily looked at the simulation screen. Because the things nobody expects are usually the things that matter most. Cale was quiet for a moment. Is that how humans think? Emily smiled slightly. I think that is how humans survive. The answer stayed with him. He had spent years hearing stories about humanity. He had heard that humans were emotional, unpredictable, and dangerous. But he had never considered another possibility. Maybe humans survived because they were willing to adapt. Later that afternoon, Marcus reviewed the students' progress. One instructor looked at Emily's results and shook his head. She does not have the physical advantages of most species here. Marcus nodded. Correct. Then why is she improving faster than many of them? Marcus looked toward the training field where Emily was helping another student understand a strategy problem. Because she does not spend her time proving she is already right. The instructor considered that answer. You believe she will become one of the academy's strongest students. Marcus watched silently for a moment. Strength is not always measured by who can defeat the most opponents. He looked back at the instructor. Sometimes it is measured by who can change the people around them. That evening, Emily walked alone through the academy courtyard. The massive lights of alien worlds reflected across the glass structures above her. She thought about Earth. She thought about everyone who had told her this journey was impossible. She still had doubts. She still had moments when she wondered if she truly belonged. But now she understood something important. Belonging was not something someone handed to you. Sometimes, you had to build it one choice at a time. The final day of the semester arrived quietly at Astra Dominion Academy. There were no dramatic announcements. No grand celebration before the morning evaluation. Just students walking through the halls, carrying the lessons they had learned and the mistakes they had made along the way. For Emily Carter, it felt strange. When she first arrived, every step inside the academy felt like she was entering a place that was not meant for her. Now, those same halls felt different. Not because the academy had changed completely, but because she had. The final leadership assessment was the most important evaluation of the year. Every student would be judged not only by their decisions, but by the impact they had on others. Commander Marcus Hale stood before the class one last time. Many of you came here believing leadership was about being the strongest person in the room, he said. But the best leaders are not remembered because everyone followed them. They are remembered because everyone became better after standing beside them. The students entered the simulation chamber for the final test. Emily was assigned a team again. This time, nobody questioned her role. Nobody looked surprised when Marcus asked her to lead. But Emily noticed something important. Cale Varon was the first person to step forward and support her decision. Emily's plan considers the variables we have not accounted for, he told the team. We should listen. The words were simple, but for Cale, they meant more than anyone else understood. Months earlier, he would have seen accepting another person's idea as a weakness. Now he understood it as a strength. The final simulation was difficult, but not because of one impossible challenge. It was difficult because every choice affected someone else. Emily guided the team through uncertainty, but she never acted alone. She asked questions. She trusted her teammates. She allowed others to contribute. When the final objective was completed, the chamber remained silent for a moment before the results appeared. The team had achieved the highest score of the semester. But Marcus was not focused on the numbers. He was focused on how they reached that result. After the evaluation, he called Emily aside. Do you know why I accepted your application? He asked. Emily shook her head. I assumed it was because I had potential. Marcus smiled slightly. That was part of it. But potential is common. Discipline is rare. Emily looked at him carefully. You believed humans belonged here. Marcus looked toward the academy courtyard where students from countless worlds walked together. I believed humanity had something this academy needed to learn. Emily was quiet. She had spent so much time trying to prove that humans were not weak that she almost forgot something important. Humanity was not defined by being the strongest species in the galaxy. It was defined by the ability to grow, to adapt, and to keep moving forward even when others believed it should stop. Later that evening, Emily stood beneath the stars outside the academy. She thought about Earth. She thought about the people who had supported her and the people who had doubted her. Both had been part of the journey. Cale approached and stood beside her. When you arrived, I thought you were trying to prove humans were superior. Emily smiled. And now? Cale looked at the distant stars. Now I think you were trying to show us something else. What? He asked. That being different does not mean being less. Emily looked back at the academy lights. She knew there would always be people who judged what they did not understand. There would always be places where someone had to be the first to walk through the door. But she also knew something else. The first person to enter that door was rarely remembered because they were perfect. They were remembered because they were brave enough to step forward when nobody else believed they belonged. And that was what Emily Carter carried with her from Astra Dominion Academy. Not a title, not a victory. A reminder that the greatest strength any person could have was the courage to remain themselves in a world that expected them to change.